Murder.
Chalk outlines.
DNA tests.
Blood.
Anonymous tip.
Beheadings and disembowelments.
Fingerprints.
The yellow tape that they have on crime scenes.
Witness statements.
Stakeouts with my cop friend and we drink coffee. UV lights that they can see on. 5 minutes.
G'day there, podcaster, and welcome to another True Crime in about 5 minutes. Belle, what do you got for us today?
Today, let's talk something that's actually happening in the news as we speak. I'm sure you may have seen the headlines doing the rounds about the update finally on what has been known as the Easy Street murders.
Oh, risky. Ongoing case.
Yeah, so I will start this, obviously, big warning. This does include violence against women, but it is also an ongoing case, and it is currently with the courts as we speak.
You've always wanted to be a journalist, so here we go.
Let's not jump to conclusions, hey?
Yeah, and Belle, you're good at this. Like it was John Benet Ramsey last week.
Mm-hmm.
It's been the front page of Netflix for a lot of people. This, I know it because I've seen it popping up in the news and I've heard people talking about it, but I must admit I don't really know the story. So I'm keen to find out because all I'm willing to give it is about 5 minutes.
Well, she's only got 4 left.
Yeah, true. Sorry. So we best get into it.
Well, yeah, so it has been unresolved for almost 50 years now. This is a crime that happened in Collingwood in Melbourne, 147 Easy Street. The house is still there, and, it has become notorious for these horrific murders. 1977, January specifically, start of the year, the girls in their late 20s, two lovely girls, Suzanne Armstrong and Susan Bartlett, they lived together, best friends since childhood. One of them Suzanne had a 1-year-old son named Gregory. And like I said, they were both in their late 20s, just living together in this share house with Suzanne's 1-year-old. Now, they were both very well liked, didn't have any enemies, did not participate in the wrong crowd whatsoever. But unfortunately, they were found murdered in their home. And they were left there for 3 days before they were found by their neighbour. Their neighbour found them because their dog was running around in the backyard and barking, and they could also hear Greg crying for days and days, which was very rare.
The baby?
Yes.
Oh, that's so sad.
So the neighbour ended up going into the house, found them, and found Gregory. He was completely unharmed, except for obviously having been left for a few days in his cot. So the cops came, they shut it all down. They found the two women. They were stabbed 20 to 50 times, which is awful. They were assaulted, and they were found. One was in the bedroom, one was in the hallway. So it was a really, really gruesome crime scene. And they did do their best to collect as much DNA as possible and blood and, things that the guy had left behind. But they did also not really shut it down as much as it's like the 70s. And this happens. I feel like I say this all the time in these episodes. The cops, they just kind of let people walk through and they were walking through and it was kind of just open season.
Yeah.
Yeah. So days, months, years ticked by. This went completely cold. Like I said, almost 50 years later. There were some people that were looked at as possible suspects, like guys that had come, like they had friends, like males, who were worried about them and were like, oh, where's Susan and Suzanne? Went to the house, apparently climbed through the window, were calling out to them. Nah, they're not here, and left. And meanwhile, they were there in the house yet to be found. So it's really horrible. And the families of the girls have never had an answer up until now. So as of this week of recording this podcast, there is now a man named Perry, and I hope I say his last name right, Karumblis, and he was 17 years old at the time. He has just been brought back to Australia, to Melbourne. He's faced the court as of this week, and he is currently the number one suspect for it.
Do we know why he's the number one suspect?
Well, he is claiming his innocence still at this point. So I'm just going to put that out there. He is saying that he's innocent. He has been living in Greece since 2016. He went over there and he only just got arrested in the Leonardo da Vinci airport in Italy because he was at the time, like I said, 17 years old. He was found with a knife and he lived 300 meters down the road from them. And the police questioned him a little bit, but he was just marked off the list. Done. Later down the track in 2016, they crossed off everybody off the list except for him using DNA. And then they asked him for his DNA and he said, yep, no worries, and then disappeared to Greece. So then they tracked down some more DNA from like related family members and, you know, ancestry, all that kind of stuff. Then, but over in Greece, meanwhile, the statute of limitations on like murder charges over there is 20 years. So he was actually fine because it had been past 20 years. So he's over in Greece. Interpol put a red notice out, which means that anybody that going through like the airports, it flags. He left Greece in September this year, went to Italy. The Interpol red notice alert went up. That's how he was arrested.
Right, okay. So Italy are willing to send people back if there's, you know,
Correct.
Deport them if there's an ongoing sort of investigation.
So we're currently, what are we, December? This is September this happened. He's been in jail in Italy. The judge has just signed off on his extradition to back to Australia. He's now come back this week on the flight. He's in custody currently, and then he'll be facing the committal mention hearing in February.
Yeah, right. Well, hopefully, you know, maybe some answers. If it's not him, or hopefully there's some more answers for the family. Because I mean, 50 years, like, it'd be good to just know what happened.
Wasn't it wild? Gregory, the baby, the
Yeah.
1-year-old, would now be a 50.
Yes.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, it was 47 years ago. So he's
Right,
like,
so
yeah,
he'd be 47,
Wow.
So he's
46.
like, so where he did get a payout as
Yeah.
well. Just a side note, he did get a payout which was given to him when he was 18 years old.
Gregory did.
Yeah,
Right.
but that was a whole thing in itself because in the 70s they were like, oh well, he's just 1 year old. Like he was supposed to get a payout for being a victim of a crime, and the police went, oh nah, and then his family had to fight for it, and then he finally got some money. But he's also like, yeah, he's been living with this his whole life.
Yeah, of
Like I
course.
said, this is like, I like to talk about cases like, oh, you know, this happened like 50 years ago, and yeah, let's talk about it, and it's done and dusted and sealed. But this is very much a current case that is ongoing in Melbourne. So all the family members, they've been in court this week with Perry, and they have been watching it all and talking to the media. So if you were a bit sketchy on why he's been arrested and what's happened, that's the 101.
Appreciate it. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, thank
But
you, Belle.
There's obviously a lot more to it, but yeah.
No, I know. Well, I feel up to date now. Like, I feel like I'm like, oh, I know what's happening.
Yeah.
And that's it!
Like that podcast? There's heaps more to listen to if you just scroll back or download the Nova Player app.
Ben, Liam, and Belle.